2023 has been a stacked year, to say the very least, and for those who enjoy single-player games in particular, there's been an embarrassment of riches over the last 12 months, with excellent new games ranging across multiple platforms and genres. Given how crowded the year has been though, there have been quite a few excellent games that have sort of slipped through the cracks and failed to receive the kind of attention they deserve. Here, we'll be highlighting a few such games. The Invincible. By its very nature, the deliberate pacing and philosophical bent of the Invincible story make it a game that not everyone might be able to get into, but if you're looking for a strong narrative and an excellent realized setting, it almost feels like a must-play. Not only does it earn its emphasis on storytelling with some truly captivating writing and character development, it also combines its sci-fi setting with a retro-futuristic art style to great effect, creating an experience that feels quite unique from what you usually find in narrative-driven adventure titles. Viewfinder. The first-person puzzle genre has seen a lot of creative ideas being brought to life over the years, but very few do it as well as Viewfinder does. Its central hook of capturing images and manipulating them so they magically become a part of the environment is just as mesmerizing as you begin the game as it is when you're deeper into the experience. At just 4 to 5 hours long, it isn't a particularly lengthy game, but it makes a lasting impression with what it does with that runtime. Jant. As a platformer that is all about rock climbing, Jant is very different from the kind of games we've come to expect from Don't Nod, but it exhibits the confidence of a developer that knows exactly what it's doing. On top of striking the perfect balance between simplicity and enjoyability with its core gameplay loop, Jant delivers in a number of other areas, from storytelling to environment design to art style and so much more. Dave the Diver. Dave the Diver is the sort of game that you probably wouldn't be able to sell very well with a short elevator pitch. From underwater diving to working at a sushi restaurant, from collecting items, resources, and upgrades to engaging in boss fights, Dave the Diver's core gameplay loop pulls from a lot of different genres, and yet it manages to make it all work together to great effect. It's honestly surprising just how enticing it can be. Dredge. As much of a cozy, relaxing fishing game as it is an ominous, Lovecraftian horror experience, Dredge is a game that can oscillate wildly between different tones and gameplay loops, and yet, regardless of what you're doing in the game, it keeps you constantly engaged and captivated. It combines those two drastically different elements together so masterfully, it's hard not to come away thoroughly impressed with the end result. Cocoon. The mark of a good puzzle game is how well it can balance simplicity and complexity, and by that metric, Cocoon may very well be one of the best games we've seen in the genre in some time. Diving in and out of its orb-like worlds to tackle excellently crafted puzzle never loses its charm, nor does the minimalistic approach it adopts on the storytelling front. Even though you can roll credits in less than a half a dozen hours, Cocoon manages to get everything out of the vast majority of its very unique ideas that it possibly can. Park Beyond. Many games have tried to chase the roller coaster tycoon high, and though Park Beyond isn't as successful in its efforts to do something as, say, like Planet Coaster does, it sets itself apart in some key ways that make it definitely worth a look. Chief among them is how gleefully it embraces its whimsical side, allowing players to populate their parks with the most over-the-top and out-there rides that your mind can conjure up. No, it's not a game without some significant issues, but building the park of your dreams in Park Beyond is still quite an enjoyable endeavor more often than not. Fort Solace. From its short runtime to the extreme simplicity of its gameplay, there are certainly some issues with Fort Solace that cannot be ignored, but it's also a game that does enough to justify a playthrough. Its greatest strengths lie in its top-notch production values and the incredible performances of its core cast of characters, not to mention its ominously atmospheric and horror-adjacent sci-fi setting. Does it do everything it can with those elements? Perhaps not, but even so, there's enough to be impressed by here. Amnesia The Bunker. 2023 has been a banger year for survival horror games, and though Amnesia The Bunker didn't make the sort of impact that other major releases in the genre did, it's still an incredibly easy game to recommend. In spite of making some pretty notable changes to the Amnesia formula, it manages to retain the series' greatest strengths, namely crafting an experience that's dripping with dread and atmosphere in all the ways you'd expect from an Amnesia game. Like a few other games on this list, it does fall a bit on the short side, but even in that short runtime, it delivers more than enough scares to last a lifetime. System Shock. The wait for Night Dive Studios' remake of System Shock was certainly a long one to say the least, but thankfully it turned out to be well worth it. From the foreboding atmosphere to the rewarding exploration to the incredible level design to, of course, the chillingly villainous showdown, Night Dive's incredibly faithful remake does an excellent job of capturing what made the original game so darn great. Remaking a game with such a massive legacy is never an easy task, but it's one that this year's System Shock tackles with great aplomb. Planet of Lana. One of several games to have gotten lost in the shuffle that was 2023's packed release schedule, Planet of Lana is a game that deserves a lot more attention than it got. It's a game that succeeds on several fronts, simultaneously telling a compelling story with endearing characters, while also delivering a solid yet simple gameplay mechanic system that are using to great effect in everything from puzzles to exploration. Add to it that it's gorgeous art design and environments, and what you get is a truly unmissable game. Season: A Letter to the Future. Season: A Letter to the Future is probably one of the more unique games we've included in this list, and that's thanks primarily to how it takes an inherently melancholic premise and manages to turn it into an experience that's simultaneously enjoyable and yet somber. Its engrossing story and the excellently realized characters that populate it would have been enough to earn a top spot on this list alone, but with gorgeous art direction and relaxing gameplay loop added on top, our endorsement for the game grows that much louder. Oxenfree 2: Lost Signals. Oxenfree 2: Lost Signals doesn't have the novelty and freshness of its predecessor, so it's easy to understand why it failed to make the same impact, especially in a major year like 2023, but for those who liked the first game, it's an easy game to recommend. Thanks to excellently written and voiced characters and a captivating central mystery, not to mention a healthy pinch of techno horror, Oxenfree 2 keeps its hooks in you from the first second until the last, while also expanding on its predecessor's gameplay ideas in some interesting ways. Asma Chronicles. Asma Chronicles obviously had high expectations to live up to, and though it doesn't hit the highs of the genre, it's still a compelling turn-based tactics experience that's well worth experiencing. On top of its endlessly enjoyable combat, Asma Chronicles does a solid job of keeping you interested in its stories, which, of course, is thanks in large part to how expertly realized its unique setting, even if the writing can be a bit inconsistent at times. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. We've seen our fair share of Jet Set Radio's spiritual successor over the years, but very few of them have managed to replicate its aesthetic and sense of style as well as Team Reptile's Bomb Rush Cyberfunk did. Thanks to some issues with the game's combat and its repetitive mechanics, it does feel like a bit of a diamond in the rough, but for those who've been desperately hoping to recapture the highs of Jet Set Radio, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is an absolutely unmissable game. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.